Folks at some of our nation's top universities pushing to make their campuses sanctuaries for illegal immigrants who could face deportation under a Trump presidency. Students and faculty launching campaigns at schools like Harvard, Yale, Columbia, and Brown, where some alumni wrote a letter to school leaders saying in part, quote, Trump's presidency puts the undocumented members of our community at unprecedented risk. The threat to students and workers requires a concrete and tangible response from the university. Words and symbolic gestures would not suffice. They're pointing to a 2011 memo, which they believe shows that immigration officials cannot enter college campuses without permission from the university. But in a statement to Newsweek, a Brown University official disputing that, but saying Brown is still committed to supporting undocumented members of its community. This on the heels of 7 major cities reaffirming their commitment to remain sanctuary cities, shielding those here illegally from deportation. So, Chris, I went to one of these universities. I went to Columbia University. The great arrogance of Ivy League students and their schools is that they don't allow ROTC on campus. I always found that so insulting, so arrogant. So you're not going to let members of the military go to top-tier universities, but you're going to let undocumented immigrants in.
Well, and I assume that in this case they're also talking about people who work in janitorial services and on staff and people like that. And part of the reason I'm kind of heartbroken about my country after this election is that we lack the peace that comes with understanding. And the peace that comes with understanding is the fact that the people who populate these Ivy League universities have no idea about what's going on in the rest of the country. And the shock and horror that greets Donald Trump's election. I wasn't shocked when Donald Trump won, because I know those voters. That's where I'm from. I understand how people who feel left behind, left out, excluded, and chosen against, how they feel. So I have a proposal, and I think it's going to work great. On the North Fork of Short Creek Road in Ohio County, West Virginia, is the Roehrig Sanitation Landfill. And I knew of people who work there, and they used to drink at the Bucket of Blood Saloon. I don't know if the Bucket of Blood is still there, but I have an idea.
Wasn't that the saloon in Tangled?
I didn't see Tangled, but I bet.
I'll get your copy.
I'm for it. But the idea is that everybody at those schools ought to go work at the Roehrig landfill, because they shut down the coal mine and the steel mill's not operating, but they can go work at the Roehrig landfill, and they can put up that trash for a while. And I bet that when they are done, they will do 2 things. They will really like recycling, and number two, they will not be afraid of people who voted for Donald Trump, and they will not be afraid of people who come from places like that.
That won't work. They won't do it. They won't do it.
We'll make it compulsory.
I went to Columbia. I know they would never do something like that.
These students are so good and they're so benevolent. And I actually am going to take the opposite stand. I think it's wonderful. I think they should shield as many people as they want in their dorm rooms, including refugees from the Middle East. So if you have families or single men coming over from Syria, I think they can find some nice, cushy, cozy, pre-war, steam-heated buildings.
Yeah, because they're essentially saying, in addition to that, that the police aren't welcome on our campus unless we call you, because that's actually fact, right? That they cannot enter the campus unless they're called or there's a warrant or whatever. So in addition to that, Kennedy, then if there is a problem, who do they call?
Well, it's like anyone else. Like, remember when the protesters were protesting police violence, and then it got violent because a biker gang came up and it started beating a little snot of them. They tried to call the police, and they're like, oh, now you want to...
How did those officers in Dallas die? They died defending people who were protesting.
Exactly right.
But it really shows, though, that this, I know what they taught me at Columbia, and I can safely say it was an incredibly liberal school, and I really worry about the indoctrination of young people in this country. There's not even a second perspective given. When I was at Columbia, there was violent Minutemen protests against Minutemen, people from representing them that came to campus, and they have a long history of this, and I just think people have got to take a dose of reality and see what kind of world we're really living in.
I have a question about the expectation in this country of the growing nature of sanctuary. I mean, now we have like a purse and matching shoes, because the purse would be the sanctuary cities, and now you've got these sanctuary places on campus that are the matching shoes. And so where else should we anticipate that this sort of safe space making for illegal immigrants in particular will pop up in our nation? I think that's a conversation that we need to have, because if the space is growing greater for them, what does that mean for everybody else?